Welcome to Storycraft Portal, where every story unfolds like a mystery waiting to be solved. Tonight, we bring you a case that seemed like a simple accident, but turned out to be something far more sinister. A woman, a deadly secret, and a journey that ended in tragedy. Was it really just bad luck, or was someone pulling the strings from the shadows? Stay with us as we reveal the truth behind Michele Davis's final drive. Michele Davis was driving home on a rainy night, her hands gripping the wheel tightly. The road was dark, and the sound of raindrops hitting the windshield filled the silence. She glanced at her phone, an unread message from unknown. A chill ran down her spine. Ignoring it, she focused on the road. Suddenly, her car swerved as if something had gone wrong. Panic surged through her as she struggled to regain control. The vehicle spun out, crashing into a tree with a loud impact. Silence followed. When the police arrived, they assumed it was an accident. But something was off. There was too much blood, and the position of her body didn't match the crash pattern. When a medical examiner checked her injuries, a shocking discovery was made. Michele Davis had been shot before the accident. What seemed like a tragic crash was actually a murder. As the investigation began, the police quickly realized that there was more to Michele Davis's death than they had initially thought. Her car had been found on a lonely road, but it wasn't just the crash that caught their attention. It was the blood. It didn't make sense. The forensic team confirmed that Michele had been shot in the chest before the crash occurred. With this new information, they started looking into her personal life. Michele was a kind woman, well-liked by friends and family, but she had recently been having problems with her husband, Randy Lee Davis. Friends mentioned their constant arguing and that Michele had been planning to leave him. The police also found out that Michele had been receiving threatening messages, but the sender's identity was still unknown. The case was now a potential homicide, and the search for the killer was on. As the investigation continued, all signs pointed to Michele's husband, Randy Lee Davis. He had been the last person to see her alive, and their troubled marriage seemed to be a motive. The police brought Randy in for questioning, but he denied any involvement, claiming he had no idea who would want to harm his wife. He was emotional, almost too emotional, but his story didn't add up. Detective Harris dug deeper into Randy's past and found a few things that didn't sit right. There were reports of violent arguments, and Randy had a history of anger issues. The biggest red flag, however, was a witness who came forward. They claimed to have seen Randy at the scene of the crash, not far from where Michele's car was found. The witness hadn't come forward earlier, fearing retaliation, but now, the pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together. Detective Harris wasn't convinced by Randy's denial, so he decided to dig even deeper. One evening, he uncovered something disturbing, a gun that matched the caliber of the bullet found in Michele's body. It was hidden in Randy's garage, wrapped in a cloth, tucked away in a drawer. When questioned about it, Randy tried to explain it away, claiming it was an old gun from his past, but the detective wasn't buying it. The gun was recently fired. Forensic tests confirmed it had been used just days before Michele's death. Things were looking grim for Randy. The timeline was starting to make sense. Randy's anger and resentment had boiled over, and Michele's decision to leave him had set him off. He had taken matters into his own hands. But there was still one question left. Why the car crash? Was it a cover-up or a mistake? With the evidence stacking up against him, Randy finally cracked under pressure. During a second round of questioning, his emotions took over, and he admitted to the crime. He revealed that Michele had been planning to leave him and was starting a new life with someone else. Randy couldn't handle the thought of losing her. In a moment of rage, he shot her before the crash. He explained that the crash was meant to look like an accident, a way to cover up the murder. Randy claimed that he didn't mean for her to die the way she did, but in the heat of the moment, everything had gone wrong. Michele's attempt to escape had pushed him to a breaking point, and in the end, it cost her life. Randy's confession was chilling. It was a murder driven by jealousy, anger, and a deep fear of abandonment. Randy Lee Davis was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. The trial was lengthy, with emotional testimonies from Michele's family and friends. They described her as a kind and loving person who never deserved the fate that Randy had chosen for her. The defense tried to argue that it was a crime of passion, claiming that Randy had acted in the heat of the moment, but the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution painted a clear picture of a man who had planned the murder, trying to cover it up with a staged accident. After a tense few weeks, the jury returned a verdict, guilty of second-degree murder. Randy's face remained stoic as the judge handed down his sentence. 50 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Michele's family could finally begin to heal, knowing that justice had been served. But they would never forget the life that was taken so violently. After the trial, Michele's family was left to cope with the painful reality of her death. Her parents and friends struggled to understand how someone they had trusted could take her life in such a brutal way. They held a memorial for Michele, remembering the woman who had always been full of life and love. Her tragic end had left a hole in their hearts, but they knew they had to keep her memory alive. Randy's sentencing may have brought some closure, but nothing would ever fill the void she left behind. For her loved ones, the process of healing would take time, and although they could never fully forgive what Randy had done, they found solace in knowing that justice had been served. Michele's story would live on through their memories, as a reminder of how quickly a life can be taken, and how important it is to hold on to those you love. Despite Randy's conviction, the emotional toll of Michele's death lingered. Her family began to focus on healing, though they struggled with the loss of such a vibrant young woman. They spent their days advocating for victims of domestic violence, working with organizations to help others escape abusive relationships before it was too late. They also began speaking out about the dangers of controlling relationships and how signs of abuse could often be hidden behind closed doors. While they could never erase the pain of their loss, they found purpose in raising awareness and preventing similar tragedies from happening. In every event and talk, Michele's name was mentioned, and her life, however short, was celebrated for the impact she made. As time passed, the case of Michele Davis faded from the public eye, but for her family and friends, the memories never truly disappeared. They kept her spirit alive through their work, always reminding others of how quickly life could change. Despite the darkness that surrounded her death, Michele's family found ways to move forward. They celebrated her life in their own way, creating scholarships in her name and supporting causes she had always cared about. Michele had been more than just a victim. She had been a symbol of strength and love, and her legacy was far greater than her tragic end. For them, her life had meaning beyond her death, and that was how they chose to remember her. In the end, justice was served, but Michele's family knew that no amount of legal action could ever bring her back. The case closed with Randy Lee Davis serving his sentence in prison. Michele's tragic story had become a cautionary tale, reminding others of the dangers of controlling relationships and the importance of seeking help when trapped in toxic environments. Randy's guilt had been undeniable, and the courtroom had given Michele's family the closure they so desperately needed. But the emotional scars remained. Michele's death was a heartbreaking chapter, but her story, her life, and her legacy would continue to inspire and protect others. Her family moved forward with the hope that her life would not be forgotten, and that justice for Michele Davis would serve as a beacon for all who needed it.